Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for GoLocal Live this Monday afternoon. The big news today, United States Supreme Court allowing for legalized sports gambling in the states. And we have with us here Dustin Gauker with Legal Sports Report. Thank you, Dustin, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, if you were a betting guy, all eyes were going on this decision from the Supreme Court. Did things play out as you anticipated?
Yeah, a lot of the people I had talked to leading up to the decision today had, said that they thought this was going to happen this way. They thought that New Jersey would win and that the federal ban on single game wagering would be struck down. So not really a surprise, although, we didn't know when it was going to happen. I actually attended oral arguments back in December, and we've been waiting ever since. So, yeah, exciting day for anybody who follows sports or is into casino gaming or anything like that.
So here we are in Rhode Island. We've been keeping an eye on this very closely here. The governor in her proposed budget for FY19 has, I believe, north of $30 million budgeted for legalized sports gaming. So what are we looking at around the country as well? We've heard here from Twin River that has both the Tiverton and Lincoln facilities as they're reviewing the decision by the Supreme Court. What are the other states that are really just now in play?
So yeah, obviously New Jersey, they're going to move quickly. They're going to be able to have betting on mobile devices at their racetracks and the casinos in Atlantic City. We've also seen Pennsylvania legalize sports wagering. West Virginia passed a law earlier this year. Mississippi sounds like it will move quickly. Delaware, which already has a form of sports betting, says it's probably going to move toward this year. And then we even saw, I think I saw just earlier today, Connecticut's governor said he was going to consider having a special session to legalize sports wagering, which they've been discussing kind of all year as well. So lots of states.
Lots of states. And you talk about the different ways to look at this here. Now, here in Rhode Island, the talk has been to have it on the premises at either the Lincoln or the new Tiverton facility. But you just mentioned other states looking at it from a mobile perspective. Again, is this just really going to shake out from a state-by-state basis?
Yeah, so you're going to see the leagues definitely look at doing federal regulation, the Major League Baseball, NFL, the NBA. It seems like they would like to have a congressional oversight. They'd like to have a law passed through Congress. So whether that's at all likely, obviously it's an election year this year. Maybe next year might be a better bet. But so yeah, there's an option out there that Congress could come back and say, oh, we're going to regulate sports wagering. But until that happens, yeah, we were kind of left with a vacuum where states can do what they want. So obviously casinos have proliferated widely in the last few decades beyond Atlantic City and Las Vegas and Nevada. So right now it's up to the states. If they want to legalize it, they can, and they can regulate it and try to tax it if they want to.
And so let's talk a little bit about that. I asked if you were a betting guy, if you thought it would play out as it did today. Do you think the leagues hold that much clout? On LegalSportsBetting.com, you had a great rundown of everyone's perspective and statements on the Supreme Court decision today. Do you think they have the wherewithal and the firepower to get Congress involved? And is it the Wild West until then?
Yeah, I think they do. They lobby already in Congress on a lot of things that aren't related to sports gambling. So, they have a lot of pull for sure. Whether they can actually get Congress to pass a gambling bill, which they haven't done in quite some time, that's certainly another question. I wouldn't bet for it, especially since we're going to see states already acting. This is kind of the thing that gaming has been the purview of states. Congress has kind of said, you do what you want as long as you're okay with it, we're okay with it. So I would not bet on a federal bill, a federal law anytime soon. But yeah, and right now we're in a world where states are kind of figuring it out. There's a lot of different policy decisions, a lot of different bills floating out there. So it'll be interesting to see what comes down at the state level the rest of this year and into next.
And so what does it look like to the average resident of an average state? A lot of folks, would go out to Las Vegas to do their sports gaming, but now if they're in Rhode Island versus in Connecticut, the stipulations, is it the residents of which, so if you're a Rhode Islander and you're traveling, which rules apply?
So it's going to apply to whatever state you're in. It's going to be a little messy probably because, yeah, if you're in Rhode Island, you have to register probably through a Rhode Island casino or through a mobile app that's in Rhode Island. If Rhode Island decides to legalize it. But yeah, it's not going to be some kind of nationwide network where you're just going to, if you're in a state where it's legal, you're just going to be able to sign in or go to a casino. But yeah, I mean, if you're going to New Jersey or visiting Rhode Island, you're going to be able to go to a casino there in theory and just say, hey, I want to place a bet, and that's okay. It's going to be just like Nevada, right? Where right now you could walk up to a casino, walk up to a betting window, say, I want to put $100 down on the game tonight, and that's allowed to happen. So that's what's going to happen. The online/mobile component, that's the part that's a little stickier, and it's not quite clear how it'll turn out.
And so let's talk a little bit as well, again, Rhode Island banking on all of this money here. Let's talk about the role of DraftKings and FanDuel. We've seen some statements from them today as well. What's their role in all of this?
So yeah, DraftKings and FanDuel, two popular daily fantasy sports sites that have kind of grown immensely in the past decade. They both say they want to be in the sports betting industry. That's a little difficult for them because they haven't really been a part of the gaming industry or even the sports betting industry. They've been just providing daily fantasy where you pick players and play in contests and you get paid based on the results of those. But they have a lot of people who are really interested in sports who obviously kind of like to already gamble slash entry fee is is the terminology they use. They actually say they're not gambling, but they have these big databases of people who are theoretically ready to bet on sports, and if that's an attractive thing, I think, to a lot of people who are trying to get into this business quickly. If you're a casino, you might say, hey, the DraftKings and FanDuel, they're already ready to go. They have people who want to bet, and might make sense to partner with them. So that's how they'll try to sell it. How quickly they can do that, I don't know.
Well, of course, here again, we do have the two casinos in Rhode Island. I mean, for the average person, if they're a big sports fan and they want to bet on a Celtics game, going to Twin River, is there some obviously fear from FanDuel and DraftKings about losing folks to these types of opportunities?
I think there's some danger of that, but I think daily fantasy is its own thing. It's something that's grown. People enjoy it. People do it because they like to do it. And sports betting has already existed in the United States in a pretty widespread fashion. Some estimates of illegal offshore betting top $150 billion wagered. So it's not like daily fantasy and legal and sports betting haven't already kind of existed in parallel. So I don't think it's the death of daily fantasy. I think they actually see an opportunity. But yeah, that's going to be one of the big storylines to follow moving forward. And
so Rhode Island here depends a lot on gaming receipts. Is there any concern about cannibalization of other games and gamings, folks liking to play the slots or table games in lieu of being able to sports nets, now going over to the sports book and playing instead? Has there been a look at that in terms of what the overall gaming receipts might look like in these states where there already is legalized slots and table games?
I can tell you that most of the big casino companies, like Caesars, MGM, they're looking at this as a huge opportunity to increase their bottom line. They don't think it's going to cannibalize existing gaming at all. They think it's additive. They think sports books get people in the doors, and they'll then gamble on other things, table games, slot machines. They'll go to a restaurant, go to book a hotel room, things like that. So they don't see that at all as cannibalization. They see it as, this is really good for us. This is going to help. Maybe not in terms of direct revenue. Sports betting itself is sort of a small margin business that is, even in Nevada, it's not a huge amount of all the revenue, but it does get people in the doors, and it creates interest. It's a marketing opportunity, and I think that's what Rhode Island casinos will probably look at it as well.
So Legal Sports Report, you can check out Dustin Gauker's total breakdown of today's decision. It's only Monday, Dustin. What do you anticipate looking at for storylines moving forward after this historic decision by the Supreme Court?
Yeah, it's what other states move quickly. I mean, Rhode Island, there was already there's stories this morning about them wanting to move forward. So it's what other states are going to do with this knowledge now, this legal clarity that sports betting can happen. Before we were kind of guessing, and now we know. So that's one. And whether Congress gets involved, I think that's a big issue. The leagues obviously want to see something other than what's developed at the state level, and obviously it would be a lot cleaner and less messy if Congress gets involved and say, hey, here's how you're going to do it. But I think those are the two stories that I see right away, but there's going to be a lot more to come. This is a big story, and it's going to kind of change the fabric of the United States, I think.
Well, we'll see moving forward here in Rhode Island, because again, it's part of the budget as what the governor had proposed. There is talk as to whether or not there is a separate legislative component after the state just expanded here from slots to table games not too long ago. So a Legal Sports Report, I mean, is this going to be taking up your entire plate here moving forward? Are there other stories to report on?
Yeah, I mean, we also report on online gambling and online poker, and I think a lot of states are going to be looking at those in parallel as well.
Okay.
You're going to see mobile wagering via sports for via sports, and then you're going to see kind of like the European model, I think, where there's all these things on one thing. I think casinos and gaming interest in Europe have found these are all complementary products and added to the bottom line. So I think that's one thing we're going to watch. I don't know. I don't know if that's going to happen in Rhode Island right away, but I do think states are going to more seriously look at more forms of expanded gaming and not just sports betting.
So is that the European model? More opportunities, more games of chance? Is that Europe?
Yeah, I mean, if you go to the UK or a lot of the regulated markets, France, Italy, they have all these things kind of already. They have table games, slots, sports betting, and just about anything you want to gamble on, all kind of under the same product. So that's obviously not something that exists yet anywhere in the United States. It's probably going to exist in New Jersey. They already have online casino gaming and online poker, and they're going to put sports betting next to it. So I think that's the opportunity. Is the next iteration of gaming is going. Everything's kind of going online, and it's a big opportunity for states and gaming interests.
That was going to be my kind of last and final question, Dustin, about online versus in person, sort of at casinos with the sports books, and that's the talk here with again Twin River. You talk about the shift going online. Do you still see a market for folks going again to the locations themselves to partake?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's still an experience. I mean, you go to Nevada, which is now at pretty much every casino that I know of has online wagering. But you go to a sports book during a big event like March Madness or the Super Bowl, the sports books are overflowing with people. They actually sell tickets to some of these things. It's not going to, it's not going to be the end of land-based gaming, any of this stuff. It's actually considered a way to cross market, to market to other people who you might not have attracted before, or just want to bet on mobile and not on land. So I think it's definitely an opportunity that there are going to be more opportunities, both land and online. And I don't think there's any reason to worry for casinos saying, "Oh, yeah, people aren't going to," or people are just going to bet mobily. They're not going to bet via our sports books if we have them. There's going to still be a big market for that as well.
Well, Dustin, I appreciate taking the time to pick your brain a little bit here today with this landmark Supreme Court decision. And is there anything we didn't cover?
I don't think so. It's my brain's still a little spinning. We didn't know when we did. We just woke up this morning. I'm actually out here on the West Coast, and we learned about the decision, and it was all systems go. So now, yeah, I'm like you. I'm trying to think of what the next stories are that we're going to do. So we'll see what those are.
Off to the races. Well, Dustin Gauker with Legal Sports Report. You can find him online. I appreciate your taking the time to Skype in here to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center in Providence. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Dustin Gauker, thank you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with our next guest here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigate Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel. I'd like to welcome my next guest into this 3 o'clock hour, Vincent Mezzalello with the Narragansett Bay Commission. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And for coming back here today.
Having me, yeah.
Because your name in the Narragansett Bay Commission's been the talk of the town right now.
It is.
As we're looking at what potential options might be from Providence and this administration under Jorge Elorza, if Providence Water under this administration is looking to pursue consideration of privatizing or leasing, what are you looking at as Providence, even taking a step back, as Providence is going through the thought process? What are you looking at to see what they do and what they're thinking?
Well, there are a number of things, of course. But I think it's important to note that this discussion between the Narragansett Bay Commission and the series of mayors since 1991 has been going on.
This isn't new.
Yes, it has. So this is not a new issue.
No.
There are those who are suggesting that this issue has only arisen because the city of Providence is looking for a, quote, bailout of their pension liability issue. But this transaction has nothing to do with that. We've had discussions with all the mayors from Vincent Buddy Cianci all the way on through this present mayor over the last 25 years, because the transaction itself is a very logical and reasonable one, and one which makes a lot of sense.
So you talk about other administrations taking a look at it, and other administrations haven't taken that next step yet. What is the process that, in your estimation, that they're going through as they go through this consideration process?
Well, I do know that the mayor's administration solicited a value, an appraisal of the system. We understand from what we've read in the Providence Journal that the appraisal came out to be about $407 million. We did not analyze that from a capital expenditure perspective as to what capital would have to be spent to put the system in a condition which is appropriate for long-term water consumption uses. But they went through that process. We are also we'll go through a process. We've gone through very cursory review of the value, and we haven't come up with a final number yet, but as they go through the process, we're going through a process, and eventually we'll come up with a number which we think makes sense.
Do you have an anticipated time frame?
Well, yeah, so you probably have read that the matter is sitting in the General Assembly right now. Bills have been submitted by the City of Providence with respect to its ability to actually enter into a transaction, whether it's a sale, a lease, or a merger with Narragansett Bay Commission, or their bill is very generic.
Okay.
It doesn't specifically say Narragansett Bay Commission. We have submitted legislation which is also very generic, which gives the Narragansett Bay Commission statutory authority to actually acquire water systems, not necessarily just the City of Providence.
A blanket,
but
blanket legislation. Before we sneak out, I'm going to get you a little closer over here. So you're taking a look at this, and we've had you on for the Narragansett Bay Commission's success with sewers, if you will. What's in the sauce that makes you think that you'd be great at water?
Well, two things. One is they're very similar in nature. So the water system takes water out of the reservoir or some aquifer. They treat it and they put it through a transmission line, and then they distribute it to respective cities and towns through other municipal water agencies. What we do is we get the other end of the pipe. That's what everyone's dumping in the water. That's the dirty water. And we clean that. And that's a much more sophisticated process, as you could well imagine, cleaning the dirty water. And we also do pipes, and we collect water. We have a collection system. We treat it, and then we discharge it. So in any event, we're dealing with pipe, especially for capital improvements. As a matter of fact, you probably know that along Greenville Avenue, the project in Johnston, the project that made the Citizens Bank World Corporate Center a reality is the fact that we needed utilities, water and sewer. Narragansett Bay Commission took on that responsibility. We did not only the sewer lines, but we did the water lines. That made that project a reality. So we see enormous economies of scale in the capital improvements program, not only for the sewer improvements, but also for water improvements and delivery systems.
So let's talk bottom line here as people from around Rhode Island are taking a look at this potential. Let's talk about the non-Providence ratepayers and how would they be protected in any sort of deal between Providence Water and a Narragansett Bay Commission?
Yeah, so, and that's a legitimate question, and we're confronted with that question pretty much on a daily basis. So what we have represented to the General Assembly leaders and the governor's office is that whenever we do a transaction, if it ever comes to fruition, it will provide for rate protection for the ratepayers, at least for the 3 to 5 years. With regard to the acquisition cost, with regard to capital improvements that may become necessary, those rates will be subject to a public utilities review, same as Narragansett Bay Commission is subject to a public utilities review for any potential rate increases that has to do with capital improvements. I know there's a lot of discussion about this bill that's been submitted that takes purview away from the Public Utilities Commission, but it's only with regard to the acquisition portion of the bill, not on an ongoing basis. So we'll make guarantees to the ratepayers and all of the state leaders, the Senate President and the Speaker and Governor, that we'll protect the ratepayers to the extent that there will be no rate increases, except that which has been allowed by the PUC for at least 5 years.
Well, do you expect, I mean, you've heard it, I'm sure, again, possibly that pushback from around the state saying after the 5 years, then what? Should this be a piece of legislation that someone, again, not in Providence should support?
Well, again, I mean, the city of Providence can raise rates as well, subject to the Public Utilities Commission. We will maintain that same process. What we're saying is rates will not rise as a result of this transaction.
Okay.
That's the commitment that we make to the ratepayers.
So keeping a close eye on the legislation up at the Assembly, I'm sure, is taking up a little bit of your time right now.
We're busy. We're very busy.
But what else is going on with the Narragansett Bay Commission? We'd like to bring you in here for updates every so often. What would you like viewers to know, apart from going up there and making the case for taking a look at this?
Well, there were a couple of things. One, we went to a Senate hearing regarding the Narragansett Bay generic bill. And of course, the discussion really swayed over to Providence Water's bill and how the two are interacting. And so I would like everyone to know that all of the speakers, all of the people who testified in that bill were confident that Narragansett Bay Commission was the right merger partner, the right acquisition partner for Providence Water. Our history of accomplishments is unsurpassed. We have a pristine reputation. So all of the legislators are very comfortable with that. But when you look at the environmental advocacy community, from a policy perspective, they're very supportive of the transaction. They think that Narragansett Bay Commission, if we have achieved even any modicum of success that we have with a wastewater treatment program, it'll be a marvelous success. And the other thing I think we should make clear for your listeners and people who read your articles is that water rates and sewer rates will be kept completely separate. They will not be intermingled. They'll be essentially operating as separate entities under one management.
Well, I appreciate your coming in here to break down a little bit as what's taking place from the legislative standpoint up at the State House, as again Providence looks to potentially sell, lease the Providence water supply. Do you have a sense of, is it sale or leaning lease?
Well, I heard the president of the Providence City Council talk about his interest in a preference for lease. We have established an ad hoc subcommittee of the Narragansett Bay Commission, headed by our Commissioner Mario Carlino, who's a National Grid employee, has a long-standing history of dealing with merger issues. The ad hoc committee has suggested that they're interested in a sale, and at this time would not have an interest in a lease. But that does not mean to say that sometime in the future that discussion is reopened, and if we can find the benefits of either the sale or the lease, we'll proceed.
Well, again, appreciate being able to pick your brain here in the studio. Vincent Mezzalella with the Narragansett Bay Commission.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be talking more water when we come back here to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. It's been a water-based afternoon so far. We just had Vincent Mezzalella with the Narragansett Bay Commission, but now we're tacking back to Providence Water for a big announcement they made today. So I'd like to welcome Cy, the board chair, into the studio here. This is the $1 million lead-free program officially kicked off today.
It did.
So letting Providence residents know how Providence Water can help them detect lead in pipes. And what's that $1 million going towards?
That $1 million is going towards helping homeowners replace their end of the lead service line that runs to their house. See, Kate, over the past year we've been focused a lot about the potential for there to be lead in people's drinking water. And what we found is that while none of our system contains lead piping on the public side of the equation, on the private side of the equation, that sort of last leg that the water has to go is where there's the greatest potential for there to be lead in the drinking water, and that's where it can really kind of leach in at that point in time.
So this $1 million, it can help homeowners. How can it help homeowners?
Well, it gives homeowners a way to actually finance the replacement of that lead service line from the curb into their house. And when they do their end, we'll do our end at the same time, totally free. We estimate there are about 25,000 households in Rhode Island that may have a lead service line. So the first step of that equation is letting people know there's a potential they may have a lead service line, and that's why we've been in the midst of this media campaign. The second part, which is really important, is giving homeowners an actual way to figure out, does my house have a lead service line? If they go to provwater.com, they can check out our interactive map to see if their house may in fact have a lead service line.
Right down to the house. You can see that. You can see that the aerial picture there.
And the size of the service line itself, so it'll tell you right there whether it's lead or copper or any other substance. At that point in time, that's when you might want to consider, if you do have a lead service line, replacing that lead service line. And that's where this loan program comes in. It's really to close that last gap for homeowners. It gives them an option to pay over 3 years at 0% interest the loan they would need to actually go in and have that replacement work done. So if they think they actually may have a lead service line, they log on, they find that they do, and they decide they'd like to replace it, the best way for them to proceed is by calling Providence Water. At that point in time, we'll send a contractor out, not just one, 2 contractors, right, because we need to get some verification here. We'll get some quotes from those contractors, and for the contractor that's the low bidder, we'll proceed forward with the program accordingly.
And do we have a sense, I'm sure every property is different when you talk about if folks do find out that they have that lead service line, from anything from time frame it would take to accomplish, and then what are, the range of costs that they're looking at? Of
course. Well, like you noted, it can range substantially, right? Like where I live, probably up on the east side, the houses are right up against the sidewalks. Those are short little service lines, and you're looking at a quote down there around $1,500. But obviously, if your property is set back a bit, again, our service footprint isn't just the city of Providence. It extends to the greater metro area. So you could have houses that are set back a bit, and that's where the cost can go up and escalate from there. So there's a little bit of a range there, and that's what we're working within. But there's no cap on how much that loan can be for. So we're prepared to lend out as much as necessary to make sure homeowners can do that. We started with initial $250,000. The Public Utilities Commission was kind enough to let us deploy towards a specific purpose, and we went through it really quickly. So we reached out to our friends at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank and said, there's a need here. Can we work together on coming up with a solution? And that's where they came forth with an additional $1 million to give homeowners the ability to actually take care of this issue.
When you talk about that initial 250,000, how many folks have taken advantage of working with Providence Water to address their lead service line issues, approximately?
I mean, a couple hundred at that level, and that's sort of what's gotten us kicked off, and that's when we realized as soon as we got the first 50 to 60 calls after the public relations campaign, we said, you know what, there's real demand here. Homeowners want to be able to do what they can to fix this issue, and that's an important charge for us. For years and decades, we've been focused on doing our side, the public side, and that's where you see the roads torn up and the water mains getting replaced and cleaning and lining where we can because it's a little bit less disruptive. But we really decided over the past few years to do what we could to give homeowners a toolkit to actually get in there and do their part.
Is there anything we haven't covered today? The big kickoff, you had a bunch of leaders out there talking again about what this can be as a benefit to the community.
It's really been a terrific kickoff in general. The other thing we've done recently is, let's say you want to go one step deeper and you actually want to test your water to make sure that there isn't lead in that water. We've started offering free testing for your water if you are a Providence Water customer. So if you contact us, we'll get you a kit. You can get your water tested and find out for sure whether or not your water has any lead in it.
Okay, so you said you got, close to 100 with that 250 level. So you must be expecting this could impact a lot of Rhode Island residents.
We're hoping so. Like I said, there are 25,000, to our best estimate, homeowners who may have a lead service line. We've replaced a lot of our service lines on our end of the equation, still just leaving the homeowner. So we estimate we've got about 13,000 remaining. So there's obviously a lot of potential for demand out there if homeowners want to take advantage of this program.
And you're the chair, of course. We just had Vinnie Mezzalello with the Narragansett Bay Commission. I'm sure people ask you, it's the $470 million question when people want to talk with you. What do you talk with folks when folks say, is Providence really looking to sell the water supply?
Well, Kate, I appreciate the evaluation that you've given us, and hopefully the bankers...
It's not my valuation.
The bankers will validate that. What I'll say is that our focus at the utility itself is actually on running that utility as efficiently as possible. I became chair a little over 5 years ago. The mayor came on board, obviously, a little bit after that, reappointed me into that position. And his only charge to me at that point in time and straight through has been, if there's a better way to do things, challenge the status quo and do it better. From our perspective, what we've been doing as a board is staying focused on water quality, what we can do on that front, and that's where we've stayed focused on making sure that our consumers get the absolute best water as possible. But as the mayor's exploring other options for more efficiency and you look for the potential to consolidate, I think these are logical things to consider, but obviously a lot of details to be worked out to see if this is the right thing to do at the end of the day.
And so you talk about your 5 years looking at those efficiencies. What would you say as you're putting together your litany of, this is how we've improved it?
Sure. Well, for one, we've centralized all of our operations. We've gone from a series of different buildings that we were operating out of, including a 100-year-old trolley barn over in a residential neighborhood, a series of modular units, and combined into one centralized headquarters in the geographic center of our footprint. We've also made sure that any of the initiatives we've taken on have been as energy efficient as possible. So that includes a solar array that offsets the majority of the energy usage that we use at our facility, as well as a number of other energy efficiency projects across the entire operation for Providence Water. So those two things have been big efficiency initiatives for us. We've also been very focused on the customer experience itself. So things like online billing, being able to make sure that you have the resources you need at your fingertips online, since more and more of our customers are moving that way. There have been other ways that have been focused on sort of the efficiencies of the system and improving it. And then, of course, you have the day-to-day running of the operation itself, the capital improvements that we need to make, making sure that we're efficiently managing the debt that we do have outstanding, working with the Infrastructure Bank, working with the Department of Health, Public Utilities Commission, our other regulators, to make sure that we're actually meeting the end goal that our ratepayers need, which is making sure they get safe, reliable drinking water.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time as this campaign now with $1 million to be able to support homeowners with, again, the lead supply line on their end. Providence Water says that they'll keep up their end and provide, again, those zero-interest 3-year loans. They'll provide more information about the program kicking off today if you're looking to take a look and seeing if it's something you might want to take part in. Cy, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Kate, thank you.
I'll let you go around the corner.
Thanks.
And we'll wrap up here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. It's been a busy day, kicking off earlier this morning, of course, with the Supreme Court saying sports betting can now be legalized in states around the country. We had Dustin Gauker with Legal Sports Report giving his breakdown. He's been looking at this closely, implications both here in Rhode Island and around the country. Vincent Mezzalella with the Narragansett Bay Commission getting his vantage point as there's talks up at the Rhode Island State House with the potential for the lease or sale of the Providence Water Supply. But then getting Providence Water Supply's Board Chair Zy to come in and tell us a little bit about the program they kicked off today. This is $1 million to be able to help homeowners, again, if they have lead pipes on their end, to be able to address that lead service pipe and be able to have a zero-interest loan for at least 3 years. So I appreciate your taking the time to tune in for the 3 o'clock show. 4 o'clock will be Josh Fenton with Business Monday. Former Director of Administration Gary Sass will be in. I have a feeling they might be talking a little sports betting and more. And of course, Mr. Innovation Saul Kaplan will be up as well. Thanks for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow. Be sure to watch at 4. I'm GoLocal News Editor Kate Nagel.